So acquiring a property is a significant investment that requires significant due diligence, because properties like this are most times very expensive and requires that you do a tangible amount of checks. I have created my own checklist on things I need to do before I purchase or acquire a multifamily property. I'm going to list them not in according to priorities, but according to the requirements. So what do I start with? I start with financial due diligence, because I really want to know if this is a good deal I want to invest in. How do I go about my financial due diligence? I check rent roll, the T12, the lease. What am I looking for in those things? I'm looking for trends. I'm looking for unspoken items. There are areas in T12 that shows me if either there is an increase in rent or a decrease. I'm looking for things, variations like that, and for me to determine if this is something I want to go into. So another thing I'm also trying to do is to compare the current rent and where the market is. So the market rent, what am I trying to achieve? I want to see if there's any loss or gain to rent. So it means that if there is a significant difference between both, that's a value add right there. It just shows that if I'm able to boost up my rent, I can meet up with the market, and that becomes more valuable and makes my property valuable. These are some of the things I'm looking at. So aside that, one of my checklists I'm also doing is the market trend. I'm looking at what the market is doing. What is the trend like? Is there a growth potential? Because we really need to know that. We need to know if the market is dying over time, if it's growing, and what is bringing about that growth. Is it sustainable? Is it a short-term growth? Is it a long-term growth? So these are things I'm looking for under my financial due diligence. So under my due diligence, after I've done the checklist for my income, I'm also going to assess the operating expenses. So I want to be sure that I provided the right expenses, and I'm comparing it with similar properties that are operating in similar ways. So I'm buying a Class C, so I'm looking for another property or different properties in that market that are Class C and what they're actually doing as regards the operation. So one of the relationship I've created to help me ascertain the market for that is my property manager. So my property management company helps me out too, because they have access to those information, what other similar properties are doing. So I use that information, compare with the property I want to purchase in terms of operations, and that's how I get, okay, this should be something, an estimated operating expense I should be making on my own property. So these are part of the checklist I make. So I've seen cases whereby they send us the financials, like the rent roll. A standard rent roll should be able to tell you the balance. Balance means delinquency, what people are owing for that current month. But I also request for age receivable. What am I looking for? I'm looking for delinquencies over a period of time, not just the last 30 days. I'm looking for 30 to 60, even 90 days and all that. I want to see the tenants are actually paying their rent. So it will help me make a decision if when I'm coming in after buying a property, I'm evicting most of them. It's going to tell me the occupancy I'm going to have, because I'm going to carry out some evasions. I'm going to know the problem ahead of time. So these are things that you need to check the lease. You need to do a lease at the beginning before you acquire the property. So the next thing I'm doing after my financial due diligence, let's assume everything checks out or pans out well under the financial due diligence, then I move to the property inspection. This is one aspect that some people just start out without even doing the financial due diligence. They go and tour the property first, but for me, I do the financial due diligence before I request to tour the property, and that's where the physical inspection comes in place. So under the property inspection, you can decide to hire a professional inspector to carry out that for you, but I typically engage my property management, and they engage a third-party specialist to check out things like the roof, the HVAC, those things that are specialties. So we engage professionals to do that. One thing you want to strike out from your checklist is you want to check out the physical aspect of that property. You want to ensure that the structural aspect of it is sound, the roof is good, and the HVAC is good. So these are things you want to check out. So you also want to do a utility inspection and systems inspections, because these are heavy items. If you do not do your proper job and you allow them slide, you end up paying so much. So there was a property I visited recently, and we found out that the entire roof of almost a 400 units needed replacement, and the budget was about 2 million to 2.5 million. So peradventure, we didn't do our physical inspection. We just went under contract and we purchased the property. That is a $2.5 million liability right there without you doing that. So you want to check the systems. You also want to check the utility inspection. So under the utility inspections, the electrical, you want to ensure that it is copper, because if it's aluminium, that will give you an insurance liability, and depending on your lender, they might ask you to do some conversion, and that is a lot of money right there. You also want to inspect the plumbing. Some of C-class properties, those ones that were built in the 60s and the 50s and in the 70s, some of their plumbing was done in cast iron. So you want to ensure, you want to know what they are, if they've been converted to PVC and all that. You also want to check for those things, because these are heavy liabilities that you want to avoid or take credit for, or ask the owner to do those repairs before you take over. So this will also help you in your negotiation in buying the property, because if you have a lot of deferred maintenance or liabilities such as that, that can give you a negotiating point to try and bring down the property a little downward. So the next on my checklist is legal and compliance due diligence. I want to be sure that I'm checking the title, the survey, also checking the permits. So let me give you a story. We wanted to purchase a small unit, I think about 40 units or 38 units, I can't remember. But during the due diligence, we requested for as-built survey. So as-built survey is the original survey of that property from the beginning. In the process of doing that, we discovered that 10 of those units were illegal structures. So apparently, let's say the property was 38 units, 10 out of the 38 units was not in compliance. So these are things you want to uncover, check out before you purchase a property. So you want to be sure that the property you're purchasing has the right survey, has no litigations on it, also has the right permit, and is properly zoned. You want to check that it is zoned for multifamily, it's not a commercial for retail. You want to be sure that it's in compliance with everything that has to do with the city and code and all that. So these are things you need to put on your checklist and be sure that that happens. You also want to do a title search to be sure that the property is really owned by the seller and there's no form of litigation on it. So those are things you want to check, and you need to hire a professional to do all this. If you don't have the skills, you might not be able to carry out yourself, so you need to engage professionals to help you handle this. So the next on my checklist is market due diligence. So this time around, I want to dive deep into the market. I want to know what the market is doing. I want to know if there's any significant growth in that market. So I think that's the market due diligence. So what exactly is it I'm doing when I'm talking about the market due diligence? So I'm assessing the market demand. So rental demand, I want to know if there are people demanding for this type of class of property, or if there are job growth bringing in people and there's a relatively high demand, and how consistent is it going to be? Is it a short-term inflow of people and all that? So this is a period where you want to really dive deep into the market and know what exactly the market is doing and take your decision. Is it a market that is going to die in a matter of 5 years, 10 years? These are things you want to know. And this is a consistent act. It's not just before you purchase. It's something you still do even after you've purchased the property. So market due diligence is one of my very important items on my checklist. Under the market due diligence, I also want to evaluate comparable comps. I want to see the amenities they are providing to their tenants. So amenities such as maybe they have grill, playground, pet park. I want to see what those values are bringing to them and see, okay, if I introduce this in my property, what kind of value would that bring to my property? So I want to compare my comps and the property I want to purchase and know where are the discrepancies, what can I do to bring about value add on the property. So after doing all the items, checking my box on my financial due diligence, checking my box on the physical inspection, checking my box on the market analysis, checking my box on the legal and compliance. So the next item I get to do is my financial and my operational projection. So I've known exactly what the market is doing, the property I'm buying, where they're at. And so the next thing I want to do is my projection. So that's my pro forma. I want to know what my pro forma or my projections would be in the next 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, depending on how long I want to hold on to the property. So I want to do the analysis and see the type of returns the property will bring for me. After doing that, I also, on my checklist, I have the CapEx projection. So I want to know how much I want to spend on my CapEx. I recently did a video about renovation, that you don't just carry out renovations because you just want to do renovations. They must bring about a significant amount on return on investment. So irrespective of I want to do my capex, I want to also check for what is the value, the return on investment that renovation is going to give me. Invariably, if my competitors are doing high level or premium renovation and is giving them a relatively high bump, I really want to put that in mind as well. Or if they're just doing the TLC, maybe harsher renovation, and they're able to boost up rent, maybe that's what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do my capex projections and what value that is going to give to me. And then aside that, I'm also going to do my exit strategy. Like I also spoke about in my previous video, you make money when you buy. So I want to know at what point do I intend to refinance or sell the property, and what returns will that give to me. All these decisions are made way before you buy the property. It's part of the prerequisites. These are part of the items on my checklist. I want to know, am I holding this property for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years? What is it, and what is that returns that it will give to me? Lastly, I will not call this the last stage, but I'm going to talk about it at this point. But typically, this is my first stage. I create the team before I even start out all these stages. I did not arrange it according to priority. I'm just arranging it according to the requirements. So these are everything I've listed. You need them. So the next on my item is you want to engage professionals or your team members. People like you want to engage an accountant, you want to engage a legal expert, you also want to engage a property management company. These are the people that you need that will help you throughout the entire process. You want to ensure that you're in compliance with everything. So you need these people on your team. So another important aspect is you want to also secure financing. So while you're doing your due diligence, you're also speaking to a lender. What I typically do is I engage a loan broker. I don't want to go myself meeting different lenders. One, that's very tedious, that is time consuming, and it's not going to give you that kind of results that you want. So I typically create relationship with a loan broker that has relationship with different lenders and can also give me advice on what the lending terms might look like. Looking at what's happening in the economy, interest rate is just changing per minute, per second, and all that. So you want to engage a loan broker and start your financing and know if they can even finance that property. You don't want to finish all your due diligence and part and you get the lender and lender says, sorry, we can't finance this property. That would be an issue for you. Or they tell you we can finance it, but very low leverage. That means instead of giving you maybe a 70% loan to value, they will say, okay, we want to give you 35%. That alone has increased your down payment. You don't want to be in that situation. So this is part of your checklist. You have to be sourcing for financing on that property that you want to acquire. You also want to engage an insurance broker. Yes, you've estimated, maybe doing your underwriting, that your loan is going to be this amount. But before you acquire that property, you want to be sure that you have the right quotes for loan. Because when you engage an insurance broker, they start asking you things like produce 3 to 5 years loss runs. You want to see there any significant claim on that property. This might affect your insurance quote or the amount that will be issued for your insurance. They also will be asking you questions. Do you know what the electrical is? Do you know what the plumbing is? This has significant effect on your insurance quote. So you want to be sure you're engaging an insurance company early enough. So one of the last things you want to do before you go ahead and purchase that property is you want to review the closing requirements. The lender is going to provide you with a lot of documents. You want to be sure that you have your legal team reviewing those things so that you can know if you can be in compliance with them and if they are not putting you in a corner. So you want to review all your legal requirements and be sure that you can meet those contingencies that have been provided to you. I hope these tips I've given to you on things or the checklist items that I get to put in place before I close on a deal. I hope this was really helpful to you. If you want more on this, subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's Blue Ocean Multifamily Group on YouTube for you to get more of this. Next week, I'll be discussing about post-acquisition checklist. What are the items that you need to check while you've closed on your deal? Are they time sensitive and all that? So I'm going to discuss this furthermore in my next episode. Thank you and have a wonderful day.